This is Mr. Chennells, and I'm trying something out here. Just kind of want to see. I'm on the wrong page to start with, but that's not good. So, just want to see, hey, how might this work if I were to record some notes and that you could go look at, listen to, and I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go, but I thought let's try it and see. And it's a part of myth that I don't always get to, and obviously at this point in time, we're not going to get to it. Even if we were in class, for the rest of the term, we probably wouldn't get to it. But so I thought, well, let's try this. Let's see what happens here. And so I'm going to record just a little bit, and then I'm going to post it on your Google Classroom, and you can let me know what you think. So the Trojan War is starting out. Who is it? Who's fighting against whom? Well, it's the Trojans versus the Greeks. And probably if you've any passing familiarity with that, you know who the combatants are in this one. Who wrote about this war? This is kind of important because his name, you may, particularly if you go off to college, and if you don't go off to college, you may read this man's works, but his name is Homer. And the interesting thing about Homer is that he was considered to be blind. And so you say, well, gosh, how did a blind man write down the story of the Trojan War? Well, the answer is he probably didn't. And some people would even say, well, no, there was no Homer. This was a collection of people who kind of put this tale together. But the interesting thing is that he, let's say there was a Homer, that he actually just had this thing memorized. He came up with it, had it memorized. Somebody else wrote it down. And no, for those of you who are sitting there wondering, it's not Homer Simpson. What is the book called that he records the Trojan War in? Which is funny because it's really not the whole Trojan War. It's just a kind of a slice of it. But that's called the Iliad. And it's a very good tale. I would encourage you to read it, now that you do have a little bit of time. The question comes up, was there a Troy, as in the city of Troy? Was there really a Troy? And the answer is yes, but it's probably not quite as large as what Homer states in the Iliad. Gosh, I wish there were a lot of more time to talk about that. There was a guy, if you get the chance to Google this, you probably find it very interesting. His name is Heinrich Schliemann, and I believe he was a German banker, and his dad had read the stories of Homer to him as a child, and he became really kind of obsessed. There has to be really a Troy, and all these people really did exist. And he, at his own, kind of on his own nickel, at his own cost, he went and excavated a bunch of places, and he did find the place that turned out to be the Troy that we've been looking for. The war itself, most people say somewhere in the range of 1150 BC. It's give or take a little bit, but that's probably the war. There's evidence in Troy when you dig there that there was a war, some kind of conflict around then, and that's the one we think was the one Homer writes about. Homer writes it down 800 BC, so that's a lot of time elapsing between when it occurred and when he writes it down. So just something to keep in mind. With history, or some people would say this is not history. I would contend that there probably is some history in here, but the longer it goes between when it happens and when you write it down, the more things can get exaggerated and things like that. Let me show you a picture, as I always like to do. This was a group did sort of a scale model thing of this some years ago. This might be what Troy looked like. There's a river there in the background, and you'll notice there's the walls, and that's where if there was war out here, the inhabitants would all kind of file into the city. And that's just a scale model that they think it might have looked like based on the archaeology. All right, I'm going to mention this here, and then I'm going to try to experiment with something else to give you a chance to answer this question. Do you know the story of how your parents met? Was it funny? Was it romantic? Was it doomed? And as I always say, this has something to do with myth, so we will come back to it. And like I say, I'll try to put this in a different format on the Google Classroom, and you'll see what I mean, hopefully. Talk to you soon.